Hello and welcome to a very creepy Spook Central special edition of That's Just Wild with me, Steve Backshaw.
Me, Lizzie Daly. Terrible.
And me, Sarah Roberts.
Lizzie, you should do Kids Tell You. That was genius.
Terrible.
Yeah. The podcast all about nature, wildlife, and how I once was playing the snake top trumps game with my little boy and realised that we had filmed, focused on, and featured every single species of snake in Deadly 60.
So naturally, you let him win and you were really gracious about it.
No, not a chance.
Steve was like, oh, and I've caught every single species, so there.
And let me tell you what I got up my sleeve next.
I was so chuffed with myself, and I literally sent messages to every single person I know going, guess what, we've the top trumps, and and nobody cared. And I said it to my little boy, and even he looked at me like, Dad, you are so sad, seriously.
To be fair, I do know a few snake experts that are probably like really, they would share stories with you and be really excited about that. So
let me know what their email addresses are and I'll get in touch. So anyway, what have you guys been up to this week?
I actually have been in Abu Dhabi this week. So I was attending the IUCN Conservation Congress, which was pretty cool, and showing my latest documentary there and absolutely
What's your
my
film
pants.
about, Sarah?
Oh, it is. So I don't know where it's going to go out yet. The plan is to push it out as far and wide as possible. But at the moment, we're just doing a few little private screenings like we did there. This was the first one, though. So I nearly hid in a little hole, not wanting to see what people thought. But it's actually, it's controversial, but it is about trophy hunting. And it is looking at African conservation from on the ground and from Oxford Uni and from activists from loads of different perspectives. But I did not know how it was going to get received. So panic.
Congratulations. That's awesome. We're proud of you, Sarah.
Thank you,
Yeah,
guys.
amazing. I always love those conferences. You meet so many inspiring people. They're a
my
bit of a
God.
burnout because by the end you're like overwhelmed with ideas and new people that you've met, and your social battery is like dead by that point, but they're great at the same time.
Yeah, but then you run around and you find out so many random like wildlife stories. It's such a hub for I already have things I'm going to put on the podcast as we go through. I'll just like slide them on in there that I found out from all the different talks. But yeah, really cool spot.
Love it.
And Lizzie, you've been doing the whole glamour thing as well, haven't you? I've been seeing pictures of you all over social media in an assortment of different fancy dresses and hosting all sorts of events and galas and awards and stuff.
I know. Last night I was at the Animal Action Awards. It was just wonderful. The wonderful Michaela Strachan was hosting the whole night. And I had the absolute honour of giving Jamal Garves, aka Manatee Man, an award, the Wildlife Rescue Award. So I actually met virtually in lockdown when the world stood still, when we were doing a live show for National Geographic. And we live streamed from the mangroves of Belize. And he single-handedly has rescued hundreds of manatees, rehabbed them, released them back in the wild. He does incredible work preventing collisions. He's just an extraordinary man, and I got this like great opportunity to give him an award last night. So
Did you get starstruck?
A little bit, especially I've been following him for ages. He's like, I think he's called the Real Manatee Man on Instagram. So do follow him because yeah, his work's incredible, amazing guy. Yeah. What about you, Steve?
I've been mostly sort of prepping for my tour, which is very much underway. I'm hoping that everyone is going to come along to the tour today wearing fancy dress. I essentially want it to be a trick-or-treating tour, and I'll focus lots on Halloween wildlife, as you would expect, which is exactly what we're doing this. What am I going as? Oh my gosh, I hadn't thought about that. Maybe I'll just go with like my head cut off and blood pouring from it and have my head under my arm. Just traumatise everyone. They did actually originally put a gag like that in the show where I was going to have my arm bitten off and blood squirting out everywhere as a part of the show normally. And CBBC told me I couldn't do it because I would actually just utterly traumatise all of the audience. So yeah.
Can I suggest that you maybe go as a slug, and if you need help with that,
there's a costume. There's a costume, you can pass it on to me. Gee, I love it.
Lizzie Daly's favourite look of all time, I think.
Yeah.
We need to reinvigorate that. Maybe the next one in person.
Gastropod. 100%.
Now, Halloween is getting much closer and the air is getting chillier, the night's darker, and spooky season is upon us. So today, we're talking about vampires. I want to suck your blood.
Is it the sexy Salvador brothers, or is this going to be like Twilight? How like what level of vampire? Are we Dracula, or are we like the sexy kind of vampire?
I mean, I'm kind of thinking more leeches and
Yeah.
vampire bats, more down that kind of line.
Yeah.
Just a warning for
Yeah.
all the women that signed up, it's not the ones you're thinking of, the very in fashion vampires right now.
Sarah, what vampires are you watching?
Have you never seen Vampire Diaries? Lizzie, do you even watch
Oh.
television?
I don't really watch television. I don't. I just watch Deadly 60 on repeat.
Oh
Good
my
answer.
gosh. Now I'm
Um,
feeling creeped out.
No, has anyone seen What We Do in the Shadows? Because that is something I have
Oh
seen.
my
and it's
gosh, I
very funny.
love it. Love it.
Yes! That's the vampire level I'm coming in at. How would you describe it, Steve? It's like a funny
It's
comedy
a
rip.
mockumentary originally written by Jermaine Clements from Flight of the Conchords, which is like a fly-on-the-wall documentary around a house of vampires who all flat share together. It's just the funniest thing ever. And Matt Berry, who is the funniest human being on the planet, and he just says anything and it makes me crease up laughing. Yeah, it's brilliant.
And actually, it's a good place to start
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to talk about how kind of this folklore creature that we all love and celebrate came about in humans, and just feeding on blood in general, because we all accept it, we all know of vampires, and we all have heard plenty of kind of stories and anecdotes of vampires in our culture. But actually, it's very interesting how it's evolved in humans and how actually there are some people who do drink blood as well. So I just wanted to go through some of those to kick off.
Can I say I've been to Dracula's castle?
It's in Lincolnshire, isn't it, or somewhere like that? It's
No, it's
where
in
is it?
Transylvania.
No, Dracula. You're laughing at me. Dracula was honestly based in Yorkshire, I think. The original
Oh my
Dracula.
gosh, this
No,
is
like,
so
it's- okay,
one of
so
those things that
I'm gonna have to
Northerners
Google
do to
this.
try and
Oh
get
my
anything.
God.
It's the Northern Tourist
Steve,
Board.
I want to hear about your trip to the castle. But Sarah, it's interesting you talk about this because we have all come up with our own
Whitby.
versions
It's
of
based in Whitby.
vampires. But the original count is from the Slavic Europe area.
Oh
He's
yeah, I mean
fully
it's
not from the
as
UK.
in the popularized version, but the real version is based in Whitby, guys. All the Northerners listening.
I'm dead. Steve, go on. Tell us about the castle.
Well, so a lot of the myths and stories, as I understand it, date from a ruler called Vlad the Impaler, who was known to impale his victims and anyone who opposed him on spikes. Absolutely horrific. But there is a castle in Transylvania in Romania, which is said to be his. And the reason I remember it, this shows what a massive dweeb I am, is that I saw my first ever wall creeper on the side. And it's full of all these tourists who turning up to, look at Dracula's castle. And I'm there going, look, it's a wall creeper.
What's
it's
a
the
wall
prettiest
creeper?
bird. And everyone looking at me like I'm totally mental. It's just a kind of fairly standard passerine that creeps up the side of cliffs and rocky faces and things, but when it spreads its wings is bright red and white, one of the prettiest birds you could ever see. And first one I ever saw was on Count Dracula's castle.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But Sarah, it's interesting you talk about pulling stories of vampires from various places across the world, because in ancient Greece, they also had the Lamia or the Enpusai, which were female demons who seduced men and drank their blood. So it's very on point for you, Sarah, and your theme. And then there's places like Transylvania that Steve's talking about, where a lot of stories actually emerged about vampires and Dracula from there as well. But actually, to kind of be nerdy and break down the science of it, it's interesting how it all came to be, because there were symptoms of the dead that people saw as, potential to be undead. So things like, when somebody passes, they fill with air, often they bloat, and as gas then leaves their body, they can produce noises and produces sounds like ooh, like groaning. they think that maybe some of the theories around the undead started with that. Things like blood coming out of orifices and noses and mouths, all again misunderstandings around signs of being undead. Also, there's a few disorders and diseases that may also contribute to some of these theories of vampirism in humans. So there's a rare metabolic disorder called porphyria.
Wasn't that what George III was supposed to have had?
Really?
Porphyria, isn't it?
I'm not sure if I don't know.
Was he a
if George III had
vampire?
it.
Is it all
Interesting.
coming out now?
Yeah. So, well, it's interesting because if you have porphyria, you have extreme photosensitivity. So sensitivity.
Oh,
to
that's
light.
why they can't get themselves in the light. Otherwise, they burn.
Yep.
That's one of the ways to kill them. Okay.
Skin blistering does happen if they go in the light. They also get reddish teeth, apparently. As a result of not going out into the light, they become a lot more pale. And that sometimes you get neurological symptoms. In particular, you kind of want to avoid high levels of sulfur compounds. And apparently, garlic has high sulfur compounds.
That's
But also-
where that comes from.
Moving forward, in the 18th century, rabies was very much a thing with big outbreaks happening there. And some of those behaviours like agitation, biting, and that ability to transfer rabies, they think maybe also encouraged these theories of vampirism in humans. And again, with rabies, you have an aversion to water and light. So it's very interesting where it all began.
Okay, I want to start with three interestingly disgusting case studies. So on the subject of bloodsuckers, I got 3 blood-sucking stories for you, and I want you to pick your worst case scenario. So out of these 3, which one is the one you would want least? So the first one comes from a town called Nanjing in China, where a 72-year-old man thought he was going for an inconspicuous wild poo. But after he wiped his bum with some grass, he was left with a rather uncomfortable feeling. He panicked and after a while took himself to A&E, only to find a blood-sucking tick had lodged itself completely, comfortably in his perineal region, i.e. his gooch. So it was surgically removed, but he was fine. Steve, any experience there? Was that...
Surgically removed? Can't he just pick it off?
Well, I think it was pretty lodged in there, and I don't know if they were potentially worried about infections with the skin around the edge. Yes.
I have a question. I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty, but when you say his goot, like, was it in his butt? Because, like...
Perineal region, the gap between the two.
The goot. Okay, so the perineal region, so that's just a bit of skin, so why can't he just pull it off?
Well, I don't, maybe he didn't know what it was, couldn't get to it, bit freaked out. But then I don't know if there was ultimately an infection around the edge because he's trying to scratch it out. I don't know. So you're both equally grossed out by that one. But the next one, it's a sweltering hot day. 34-year-old Christine from Kansas is out gardening. Admittedly, she realised too late that she had not put bug spray on. Ticks are common in the area, so she's not surprised when she has to remove about 20 from her body when she finishes. She's meticulous, or so she thinks. Then, a few days later, she wakes up in the morning and she removes her eye mask and feels immediately uncomfortable, looks in the mirror and finds a teeny tiny larval tick has lodged itself in between her eyelashes on her lower eyelid. So, like, right, where you put your eyeliner, that's where we're talking here. Safely removed, it was fine. But which one makes you cringe most out of those two? Eyeball?
Anything to do with
eyelid.
the eyes. Anything to do with the eyes. We had someone on an expedition who got a leech in their eye, which is just absolutely horrific. And the other one was one of my friends on one of the Lost Land expeditions was sucking on the pipe from his camelback, his kind of drinking thing. We're in the rainforest, and then he was kind of like, "Oh, I've got a jelly baby stuck to the roof of my mouth." But I haven't been eating jelly babies. And that was when he realised that he had a whacking great leech that attached itself to the roof of his mouth and just swelled up on his own blood. So yeah, I mean, you get them everywhere. And I have to say that for boys particularly, ticks in a place that you just don't want to have ticks, it almost seems like it's the most common places to find them. I mean, I can just remember my camera operator.
I don't want to ask.
When he said it,
Steve,
you just remember.
Blue. He's South African. He goes, I've got two ticks in the honeymoon suite. Which, yeah, that's my South African accent. But yeah, that meant 2 in his pants.
Okay, last one. Speaking of them where you don't expect to see them, we're back in China, and this time in the mountain area where we've got a 73-year-old lady who is living a lovely, happy life with her cats. And naturally, they sleep on the bed with her. But I don't know if you can prove this was the moment when it happened. But anyway, she starts to get a strange sensation that she just can't ignore. Eventually, she gives in. She goes to a specialist to get it checked. When she sees the doctor and they shine an osteoscopic device into her left ear, they can vividly see an engorged adult tick just outside of her eardrum with a nest of eggs that have all latched into her ear canal. And it says literally, because this was from an Oxford medical case, and it says, resembling a nest within a cave.
I love it. Scientists just like make everything so practical, don't they? I think the eye thing for me would be the worst, just because, like,
Yeah.
man, that just sounds incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
I think the
grim.
ear for me is the grossest.
But, the ability to drink blood has evolved multiple times across the animal kingdom. I know we're going to go into a few more wildlife examples, but kind of coming back to the people aspect, you can see why it is beneficial, how it's full of nutrients, how, it's high in protein and iron, and in areas where you're particularly remote, aside from Dracula and vampires, it could actually be a bit of a lifeline. So we've seen this a few times in people as well. There's different populations in South America, the Atacama people. There was an indigenous group that actually would drink the blood of pinnipeds, so sea lions and seals. And again, they may be out in the middle of nowhere for long periods of time. So it's a really great way of actually sustaining themselves. It's an important food source. Elsewhere across the African continent, so the Maasai people of Kenya and Tanzania, they also are known to drink cow's blood and milk. And again, if you think about all the incredible nutrients that are in that and how important it would be for sustaining them for long periods in the middle of nowhere without any other food, low cost, they're able to do it and extract that blood in a way without killing that animal, which is a whole topic within itself. But it's just an interesting adaptation in humans even, and an important one for being able to sustain populations elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, to enlarge on that, particularly in those African peoples that you're talking about, they will milk their cows both from the udders but also from the veins and the arteries. So they will take a certain amount of blood with the protein and the iron and everything that is involved in that. The animal system is going to regenerate it. It clots relatively easily, and they'll drink it. And it sounds abhorrent and incredibly cruel and also faintly disgusting. I have to say, I was at a funeral ceremony in a little island called Sumba in Indonesia back in 1990 when I was on my first big sort of overseas experience expedition all on my own. And I was handed a pint of buffalo blood, fresh from the animal, still warm, coagulating as I drank it. And Lizzie, as I was saying this, I know you're a vegetarian and this must make you want to gag. And yeah, I mean, one of those things that you absolutely can't say no to. And I can almost, as I'm describing this to you now, I can smell it. I can smell that irony scent of fresh blood. And actually it's making me want to barf as I'm just telling the story.
But I too have eaten blood, and obviously being a northerner and somewhere close to the Scottish borders, it's not so often that you come into contact with something called black pudding, which has blood in it. You just don't think of it. We probably were quite resourceful at some time in the past.
For ad-free listening, our newsletter, special deep dive episodes and members only benefits, you can subscribe to us at that'sjustwild.com. I have a very, very spooky species that I need to introduce you guys to that, I don't know if you've heard of this one. I certainly hadn't done when we were out filming it. But we were in Amazonia and we were trying to find for Deadly 60 our kind of third species to feature on the episode and didn't have anything. And we were chatting to my local guide, a guy called Dudu, who lives in the forest, amazing amount of knowledge. And he said, well, what about giant candiru? And we were like, what? I mean, are you making that up? Obviously, we knew about the normal candiru, the little teeny tiny catfish that live in the gills of fish and famously, are known for swimming up into the urethra of people. We talked about that before in the past. But had never heard of giant candiru. Well, he took us to this corner of the river as the night started to set in and dangled a bit of meat into the water. And what we saw, first of all, it was completely unbelievable, but secondly, would live in my nightmares for the rest of my life. What looked like, have you guys seen or read a series of unfortunate events, Lemony Snicket?
I've seen the film, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So you know the lachrymose leeches
Yeah.
from Lake
That
Lachrymose?
big old lake. Yeah.
They were like that. These
Oh.
incredible, long, slithery, leech-like animals, but much bigger than leeches, just came across the surface of the water. It churned with their bodies, and they burrowed into the meat in a kind of twisting motion. And it looked like a shotgun had been fired into the thing, and they completely demolished it in under a minute. It was
Wow.
absolutely sickening, terrifying. We'd been swimming with like pink river dolphins in this same river. Didn't even know these animals existed. And these extraordinary vampiric candiru catfish shredded this big chunk of meat that we had. As we were watching, the water churning with their bodies, it was unreal.
Do they only go for dead creatures or?
Well, so we talked to, I've struggled to find any decent information about these animals before or since, but talking to Dudu, he said that, quite often people will go missing in this part of the world and their disappearance gets blamed on all sorts of things. It gets blamed on the piranhas, it gets blamed on the caiman, the big crocodilians. But he said most of the time it is pure and simple that they've just gotten nailed by the giant candiru. Or
Jeez.
but it's absolutely specific to that time of the night, just as it's starting to get dark. An hour later we tried it, didn't happen. In the daytime we tried it, didn't happen. But just for that hour or so after sunset, just as any good vampire is heading out to feed.
I know, I was just thinking it sounds like the start of a horror film. New Lake Placid.
Yeah, it was really something. It really was quite something.
And do they feed like in a feeding frenzy? So they all kind of
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah,
the water
wow.
was boiling. It was
Wow.
boiling with these creatures just fighting over the top of each other to just shred. And like I said, they're spiraling into the meat, twisting and twisting and twisting and taking big chunks out of
Wow,
it.
like a cookie cutter kind of thing.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
ugh.
That's pretty epic.
I've got a bit of a confession to make, actually. So on that same trip, I filmed vampire bats for the first time. So this was in series 1 of Deadly. It was like in 2007, 2008. In the same area in Brazil, we went into a cave with a local expert who told us that it was full of vampire bats. And we caught, using a net, one of these bats. And we brought it down and I got it to the camera and I did my whole piece to camera about this bat, about vampire bats having the sharpest teeth in the world and, how they lack enamel on the edge of their teeth. They're so sharp. They're like razor blades. The animal, they bite, don't even feel them biting. Did this whole piece to camera and it flew away and it was amazing. Great sequence. And when we got back home, we got to the edit, I got a little email going, "Oh, Steve, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but that wasn't a vampire bat. I mis-ID'd it." Well, I mean, I'd been told that it was one, and I got this bat in my hand and looked at it and it had pretty amazing teeth, and I was like, well, yeah, it's a vampire bat. And I did the whole piece to camera about it. It wasn't a vampire bat. And when we actually filmed real vampire bats for the next time and you see their teeth, you're like, oh yeah, okay, no, fair enough. That is definitely a vampire bat. So yeah, that is, I think, the biggest mistake that I've made in my career. Well, apart from Strictly, it
Wasn't a mistake, Steve.
Always, and actually,
Subjective.
it feels quite good. It feels quite cathartic to having owned up to that after all these
It's like
years.
confessions.
It is kind of like confession. Yeah.
Well,
No, it
it's
feels
tough. The
good.
pressure's on, Steve, because like everyone expects you to know everything about everything. But in the moment, I'd imagine you're also just super pumped to
Yeah.
potentially see a vampire bat.
I know.
So you're like, this
I
is
know.
amazing.
And I never sort of went, hang on a second. Hopefully I won't do that again.
I definitely made those mistakes. I actually once called a Cape buffalo a water buffalo, which was just a big no-no. Absolutely got called out for that. It's just like, I don't know, just sometimes now and again you just want to literally throw yourself out of the window and be like, okay, well, that's my entire career over. because of that one mistake, that one moment.
Sarah's staying very quiet.
I
on this
know,
one.
I'm so very quiet. I'm just forever grateful that all the sharks cut out a lot of my mistakes, but I had a good half-hour mistake walking around in knee-depth water in Honeymoon Harbour in Bimini, getting real confused. And I blame the pressure, complete and utter pressure of the point system and rushing, but I was falsely told, and I should know because I even freaking worked in Bimini, but I was falsely told that there were southern stingrays, but there might also be common stingrays, and I'm like, I got that information just before, and it was absolute rubbish. And I was looking at the baby southern stingrays that have the full tail, and then the adults that had been run over by boats and therefore don't have a full tail anymore, and getting the most confused as I was trying to count them all because they're there en masse swimming around you. And I'm like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh God, okay, because they're the big ones with the no tail, and then these are the little ones with the. And I nearly lost all common sense and logic for a good half an hour.
We all feel good now. We've all owned up to our massive mistakes.
It's like a therapy session.
I feel good. This feels like therapy.
So I just feel like bats are really getting exploited in the science world generally, because we've had drunk flying tests of bats. We've had crash tests where they had the little harnesses on to see how they got out of the cave without crashing. But now the scientists have got poor old vampire bats and forced them onto workouts. So it was Toronto University who really wanted to investigate the metabolism of vampire bats, because it is such a unique diet, right? Drinking blood instead of eating different foods. And the way that they wanted to do that, because it would be too difficult to check their bloods and their heart rate and their oxygen supplies while they were flying. So instead, they made bat treadmills. The reason that they did this is because you often see vampire bats walking on the ground following different scent trails.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, well, they can walk, so this isn't that ethically weird. So yeah, anyway, they captured 24 vampire bats, and they measured the oxygen intake, and they basically found that the amino acids that come from the blood were directly used for the bat's metabolism. So they can't store them as energy, much like we would store body fat and we would break down sugars in our blood. They just broke down the amino acids in the blood itself, which is great, but it also means that these little bats have to eat every day or they risk starving to death. But it was super interesting. And the other thing to think about with cute little vampire bats, I'm so biased because just looking at this picture of it on a treadmill, I just feel empathetic as somebody that is not a regular gym goer. I'm like, this poor guy. But the other thing to note is that there's also been scientific reports recently in February this year that suggest that our vampire bats are being forced northwards because of climate change. So they're soon to go into actual USA, and we might find them there, which is kind of worrying. You hit on rabies earlier, but these guys can carry rabies between cattle, and so I always worry when animals move into different territories about human wildlife conflict and how people are going to receive them there. But that's an interesting situation, both for the cattle and the farmers and for the bats themselves.
Already in this episode, I know we've only really scratched the surface for some of the species that are blood-sucking, but we have covered quite a variety of species, and I mentioned it earlier, but this is like it goes to show like how convergent evolution, this independent evolution of blood-sucking is extraordinary across the animal kingdom, not just in populations of humans, but we've touched on vampire bats and leeches and ticks. There's birds I'd love to throw into that as well. So the vampire finch, I think this is quite well known, but in the Galapagos Island, vampire finches will actually feed on the root of that kind of the feather, and they'll create little cuts on Nazca and red-footed boobies, and actually also drink the blood on top of also eating insects and lots of other things. It's a big part of their diet, but you don't think of birds also being blood-sucking. And so there's all these different adaptations and ways of extracting the blood, but something that Steve alluded to earlier as well, is this ability to be able to then keep that blood flowing. So those anticoagulants. And the species that we have talked about all have different enzymes and different chemical compounds that in their saliva and when they're actually able to create these cuts to then prevent this clotting of blood, which is fabulous and really gross at the same time.
I had a paper published early this year in Australocology with Professor Christian Dunn and Dr. Mark Mannering, both from Bangor University, and it was all based on observations that I made in Suriname with a particular kind of bird that seems to be in the process of evolving that vampiric behaviour.
What's the bird?
So the bird is called a cowbird. The animal that it's feeding on is the tapir, and it's evolved this very evident relationship where you can watch cowbirds covering tapirs and they pluck off ticks and mites and things, just like you see oxpeckers doing with other big animals in Africa. And in exactly the same way, we saw the cowbirds heading to parts of the tapir's body that were already cut or wounded or scabbed or scarred, and picking off those scars and scabs and picking open the wounds to feed on the blood. So it's possible that the behavior started off with them feeding on ticks, which are going to be full of blood already. And they, that was a symbiotic relationship where they're kind of helping out the animal by taking the parasite, but getting the food at the same time. But it's changed to an extent where now the cowbirds will focus on the wounds. They'll focus on the scabs and the scars, and they will actively target the blood. And they've gone from being a help to the animal to being a parasite.
Absolutely amazing.
I have another incidence of possible vampirism in evolution actually happening now, and it's the vampire moth. Have you guys heard of those?
No, I didn't know moths could break skin.
Well, so there is one kind, several different species, but it's in the Erebidae family. They're known as vampire moths. And they have an unusually stout proboscis, which they can use to break skin and they can use to suck blood. So Russian scientists who've been studying them have shown that if you put them on your hand, then they can drill their hook-like tongues under the skin and suck blood for as much as up to 20 minutes. And they will deliberately target animals and suck their blood. And it appears to be a kind of the derivation of the behavior known as mud puddling, where some moths will come together at a food source, whether that is dung on the ground, whether it's fruit, and they use their proboscises to get into it. But they have also started feeding on tears or pus-filled wounds, and then over time, and it appears at a relatively short period of time, the proboscis has got shorter and stouter and more able to actually penetrate and stab through wounds to become vampires. It's not the only thing they feed on other things too. But yeah, it seems to be a whole sort of case of everything we've been talking about why, blood is this amazing potential food source, and why animals across, like you said, Lizzie, across all the different animal groups are, able to focus on it.
So perhaps it's not that unusual, really. I'm just amazed at hearing you talk, and your paper, like the behavioural adaptation of those cowbirds to understand, to target areas. Like they have to have, it has to have a real driver of importance, right? To be able to know that blood has the nutrients, to find the weak, thinned areas or areas where they have now associated to be access to blood. And actually targeting those, that is pretty phenomenal if you think about it, especially if it's not a primary food source. And I just wonder if we'll see more of it as food limitations show up in other ways in other species. It's quite cool.
When you talk about targeting things, especially bloodsuckers, I have one last story to share with you guys that is formerly known as the Big Itch. So when you think of vampires, disregarding Damon Salvador, bloodsuckers are not generally regarded as great for human welfare, and it is not gone unnoticed by the US military. In 1954, in the middle of the Cold War, they thought they'd try something new with the bright idea that they had, which was testing fleas out as a biological weapon And as I said, it's known as Operation the Big Itch. It's difficult to find much information on this, but the basic concept is that they took fleas from tropical rats, bred them in large numbers, and then put them inside bombs. And they tested to see, firstly, if the fleas would survive the drops. So, like, the bombs obviously weren't like explosive kind in the way you're imagining, but they did release lots of fleas from the air. And so they wanted to see if they would survive the drop. And then secondly, they wanted to see if they could be used as a vector to cause disease outbreak and at the very least completely and utterly distract enemy fighters in a concentrated area. So they were dropping bombs of fleas with like 100,000 fleas or up to 200,000 fleas at once. They found it did work. They had guinea pigs on the ground that had to be there to see if, you know, they were going to get itchy at the end of this. Now, if the sources of Wikipedia, because I really hesitate in quoting Wikipedia as a source, but there's not that much information about this. There's various different sources, but there was one quote on Wikipedia I want to share because if there's even a hint of truth in this, like, just cracks me up. But the smaller bombs were successful, but the larger bombs did not go as planned. And one of the bombs with 200,000 fleas actually detonated or leaked, if you will, depending on how you look at it, in the plane with the crew. So I think that might have been like the end of the study there. But yeah. A vampire in the smallest form.
I'd want to be one of those volunteers, I think. Sounds pretty cool.
You weirdo.
Not on the plane.
You're so weird. Why would you
Fleas
ever want to get...
amazing.
They itch. Who wants to be itchy voluntarily for a
Fleas
vector
are
that
incredible.
can carry disease? Oh, yeah. You blow
They
my
are
mind,
incredible.
Lizzie Daly.
Please blow my mind. Can I finish on actually like a bit of a positive spin? It's a bit of a loose link, but I thought vampires, Dracula.
Go on.
Got to give a shout out because there's a reserve in Ecuador in the Cloud Forest called the Dracula Reserve, and it's got that name because of a specific species or group of orchids, so the Dracula orchid, beautiful orchid, and now protected because of this reserve. But for any young people who are listening, please check out Reserva Youth Land Trust.
Gosh.
So I just
can't believe it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I just saw Callie at the
everyone knows
IUCN
Callie.
Conservation
We all
Congress.
know
She's
Callie,
so
of course we
great.
do.
Yeah, hello,
Mega.
Callie. She
Okay.
listens to us as well, she was saying.
Massive hello, Callie. We love you and everything you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes to show the power of what they do. They're a youth-led organisation. They've established this reserve, the first youth-led established reserve, I believe.
Didn't they get all the
anywhere?
fundraising for it as well to
Yeah.
establish it? The kids all came together to buy that area of land.
Yeah, the entire board, the entire organisation is made up of the youth, and the fire in their bellies and the passion and the determination that they have is incredible. And they're not just like kind of volunteers and passionate, biologists and ecologists. They are really the real deal, and they've gone on to protect vast amounts of land and do really incredible work. So just a little Dracula shout out to that reserve and then the team and Callie.
That is brilliant. And anyone out there, any youngster out there who wants to know how they can make a difference, please do check out the story of the Youth Land Trust
Totally.
Reserva, what they're doing, what they're accomplishing. It will give you hope. And Lizzie, what a cracking way to finish the episode.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise we're just talking about death and blood-sucking and leeches, aren't we, really?
Yeah, true.
Right, like always, you'll have a Q&A episode coming your way on Friday. So remember to send your questions to questions@that'sjustwild.com and we'll get to it.
That's Just Wild is an original Fresh Air production. The producers are Eva Higginbotham and Emma Crampton. Your support is really welcome. You can follow us on your favourite podcast app. Leave us a review. It makes all the difference to the whole team. And for ad-free listening, our newsletter, special deep dive episodes and members-only benefits, you can subscribe to us at that'sjustwild.com.
Remember, we're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and you can also find us at That's Just Wild Pod. Thanks for listening. See you next week.